Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturning. Years ago I made a segmented project that I call a Drunken Vase. Well, I remembered that one and decided, well, I can do something similar but different again in this case. So I started with a plan, but true to form, as the pieces got drunken, it had other ideas. So here's how it turned out, but let this be a lesson to you. Don't let your segments drink and turn.
Almost all of the wood for this project comes from the estate of a fellow woodturner. I am not sure of the species of the woods. With that said, I grabbed this piece to serve as part of the base. With the drum sander, I cleaned it up and reduced the thickness to about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. I do not use a floating base in my segmented pieces. A floating base is intended to prevent destroying the piece from expansion and contraction from humidity changes. However, I believe we can accomplish the same objective with much less effort by using a plywood approach. Plywood has plies glued at cross angles. This has the effect of resisting expansion and contraction. So after sanding the wood to a 1/4 inch thickness, I glued 2 pieces together at right angles. The third piece will come later at a right angle to the middle ply. By gluing my own plywood out of project wood, my plywood matches the project. Meanwhile, while the glue hardens, I can start making my segment rings. Using my updated wedgie sled with my blade guard and length gauge, I start cutting segments. I usually saw only one ring at a time. The advantage that I see is an opportunity to get glue drying while sawing instead of cutting all the segments and then gluing all them together. This project will use many different species of wood mixed in the same ring. There will be 12 segments in each ring, all mixed up. I used to glue a ring all at once. Many of my fellow segmenters glue rings this way. However, I prefer a rub joint technique where I put a bit of glue onto the joint area and rub the 2 pieces together while making sure there is complete coverage. After a couple of rubs, the excess glue is squeezed out and the rubbing stiffens. After aligning the long points, I set the pair aside on my glue table to harden. After gluing pairs, I usually saw the next set of segments while the glue dries. Then come back to glue the pairs into trios. Since there is little pressure on the segment sets, I only need to let the glue harden for 5 or 10 minutes at the current temperature before handling again for the next step. Then glue the trios into half rings using the same rub technique. Again, after a short drying time, make witness marks on the half rings and take them to the disc sander to make the mating surfaces match. When the witness marks are gone, they're good to go. I glue half rings with a slight variation. Instead of simply putting the segments aside, I use a band clamp to assure the halves go together in alignment. My plan for this project involves a lot of segment ring mounting and centering. A long time ago, I designed and printed a smaller Longworth chuck. This chuck is the right size for this project. It is tool-free due to oblong pins on the face and finger-controlled knobs on the backside. This project uses a lot of double-sided tape to mount segment ring to faceplates. With the segment ring mounted this way, it can be mounted to the lathe to be split or sawn on the bandsaw. I use both in this project. At this point, the first segment ring is mounted to a wood faceplate with tape. I can start making the base segment ring. This step is to cut a mortise into the segment ring to receive the partial plywood I glued earlier. Now for a trip to my gluing station. While not required, I epoxy the 2 plies into the mortise. For the application, epoxy, being less flexible, has an edge over wood glue since I do not want wood movement. With part of the center in place, I can clean up the surface. And now glue the base permanently to a faceplate. It will stay there until the project is finished. The base ring is ready for a mortise to receive the final ply for the base. Then fit the remaining ply for my DIY plywood to a mortise on the opposite side of the base ring. This is also epoxied into place and cleaned up. My base ring is ready. But wait, I need some thin rings of maple to accent the drunken layers for this vase. I find it much easier to split a thick ring than to glue up segments for a thin ring. So, starting with a thick ring, I could use either the bandsaw or split the ring on the lathe. This time I chose the lathe. Either way, I have to clean up the new surface to flatten the surface and to ensure uniform thickness. With the faceplate on both sides, a parting tool does the work. Sometimes the segment ring is already glued to the project, other times, such as now, the ring is mounted with double-sided tape. At this point, the base ring has a maple ring and one complete ring glued on. First trip to the bandsaw. I'm only using the angled capability of my sled, none of the rotational or offset capabilities. I set the angle by eye by sighting where the blade will enter and where the blade will exit on the other side. Then saw very slowly to avoid bending the blade. Also, keeping my hands out of the way of the blade. No offset sawing for this cut. Then glue on the offset after rotating it 90 degrees. This is difficult because any pressure tends to force the angled rings out of alignment. A slew of clamps helps. Afterwards, a series to mount, saw, and glue operations. I struggled with ring slippage. More sawing since I actually had to make more than 4 trips to the bandsaw, more because of mistakes or design opportunities that came up. Finally, what seemed to work best is to use scrap wood to keep the rings in alignment. These were all hot melt glued mostly on the short side of the slanted ring. The vase is nearing completion. To me, it looked pretty ugly. However, I can pretty it up in the final turning. The vase top is far from even after all the gluing. A final mixed segment ring is glued to the top. Now I need to face it off level so that I can glue on a final maple ring and a top walnut ring. While I'm at it, I take the opportunity to start to clean up the exterior. Most of the interior I've glued up as I glued on successive rings. A little at the inside top still needs some work. Finally, the last rings are glued on and are dry enough to turn. For the exterior, I mostly use my bowl gouge in a shear cutting action. This yields very thin shavings. To me, there is one principal reason to avoid a push cut. The difference in wood hardness and grain direction in segmented projects, and especially in this project, tends to make tools jump and chip. The shear cut is more easily controlled. A design opportunity prompted me to change the top walnut ring from an outward flare to an inward taper. A round nose scraper cleans up the inside. I'm limited in how deep I can use a round nose scrapers, which makes me glad I did most of the cleanup as rings were being glued up, while the cuts were shallow. Otherwise, I would have to deploy my deep hollowing ring. After sanding, I can apply a first coat of wipe-on poly. I like how the wood comes alive. The Drunken wood pattern is fascinating. It was difficult to glue up with the slanting surfaces wanting to slide out of place, but it is complete now and it is beautiful. Meanwhile, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my website, in addition to subscribing on YouTube. When you subscribe to my website, I email when there is a new video, which is more reliable than YouTube's wandering algorithm recommendations. Please share my videos with your friends. I keep these videos short and to the point to respect your viewing time. I always appreciate your comments and questions, and please wear your full face shield whenever the lathe is running.